everybody, and welcome to another episode of Time Out with Doc and Caveman. As always, you are here with Dr. Fantasy and my co host, the Fantasy Caveman. We are right around the corner from some playoff basketball, so there's a lot of storylines to cover, a lot of excitement, a lot of things going on. Each team has either 7 or 8 games left as of this recording, so we're right around the corner, and with some of these races coming down to the wire, for the play-in tournament, and you got seeding that's on the line here at the end of the season. Ironically enough, LeBron James said that seeding doesn't matter, health matters, right? So
Yeah, I mean,
uh, there's my segue there. But LeBron had several things to say about lots of different things. That's being very specific, but that was one of them concerning prioritizing health over playoff seeding. This is the time of year where, and we're going to talk about injuries throughout this, where it feels like this year comes down to who goes into the playoffs the healthiest, which I don't love, but that's just the state of the NBA. You lose a star player and your entire outlook can change. And then I believe it was yesterday, as of this recording, LeBron came out and said he wasn't sure on how much longer he'll play in the NBA. When somebody asked him, he said, not very long. I'm on the other side of the heel. I'm not going to play another 21 years, that's for sure.
I
So,
think it's a safe
caveman,
bet.
yeah, that would be insane if he was playing till he was 60. So, yeah, what do you think about these LeBron comments here?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think LeBron for one is being sort of real about the situation. I mean, like people say, Father Time is undefeated, but LeBron is holding him off for a while now. Uh, I still believe that how long he plays is kind of gonna determine when Bronny comes out. Now, a lot of people have been saying, because I think Bronny's eligible next. Uh, is he eligible this upcoming draft, or is it?
Yeah, he can come out this year if he
Yeah, that's what
wants.
I'm saying. So it's like, that would be if he came out, there'd only be one more season for Bron. But a lot of people are saying that he needs to stay, and get uh polish his game, and because he's not really NBA ready right now from a lot of scouts and whatnot. But when you're the kid of LeBron James, that holds a lot of weight, whether it's fair or not. That's just the reality. And LeBron's been on record saying that he will go to any team that drafts his son. So, you know, that that's the I think that's the key factor here, and it's been the key factor for a couple of years now. So you know, basically, uh, if if what the scouts are saying are true about Ronnie, and basically, I think LeBron's got like two more. I don't think Bronny's coming out. I just don't see it. And with that being, if that's the case, then I can see LeBron probably playing 2 more years after this season, because if Bronny doesn't come out, then it's at least one more. I don't see Bronny staying all four, you know, because I don't think LeBron playing 4 more seasons. I don't think we're gonna see LeBron at age 44 in the NBA. That would be a touch ridiculous, but I see Bronny staying another season at USC, so I think we got maybe 2 more seasons of LeBron. But uh, the point about prioritizing the health over the seeding, if you look at the state of the Lakers and what LeBron is basically saying right now, they're gonna be in the plan. They're not gonna catch 3.5 games with 7 or 8. If they have 7 or 8 to go, so they're not gonna catch not being in the play-in. So at that point, they're already, have to fight to make the top. So, it's like, might as well, try to go in as healthy as you can be, to fight for your spot in the playoffs and the play-in. So, I mean, that makes perfect sense what he's saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think people blew the comments out of proportion with him saying that he was getting closer to the end of his career. People were like, does that mean he's retiring now? I was like, I don't think that people listen to what he said. I mean, A, he's 40 years old, so yeah, he's getting close to retirement. And B, he just said he's getting close. He didn't say he's retiring, so chill out, people. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Bronny because we're kind of in unprecedented territory here. Like Michael Jordan never had the chance to play with his sons, and people really aren't put in this position very often. So, and you couple that with the NIL deals now. Bronny is making an estimated 7.2 million this year. And that might not be as big of a deal as people make it because they're like, oh, why would he come out of, into the NBA? Because he's making so much money. I was like, yeah, do you know how much money his dad makes? I don't think Bronny needs to ever worry about money. He made $7.2 million as a freshman in college, and his dad is going to be a billionaire soon. I think he's going to be okay at the end of the day. So I don't think
he doesn't even need NIL. He doesn't even need any NIL deals or anything.
he really doesn't. So I think that's kind of being blown out of proportion where people are like, oh, why would he? I don't think that the NIL deals matters much. Bronny and I think LeBron have both said it over the last few months where they're going to prioritize Bronny's development. And if they think that for his development, it's best for him to come into the NBA and play in the G League. I mean, he probably won't be in the G League if he comes out, but I mean, if it's just riding the bench and, being around an NBA team, if that's best for his development, that's what they're going to do. If they believe that staying in school and getting more minutes as a sophomore is going to lead to him becoming a better player, that's what they're going to do. And I mean, I think people were a little too harsh on Bronny this year, and he came in with some expectations, but people forget that he had that heart problem in the off season, and he kind of got started late, and that was a scare. So, uh, I don't think it's really fair to judge who Bronny is yet. I watched a few USC games, and he's by no means a superstar. As of right now, he's a very good defender. He is very pesky and puts in a lot of effort defensively. His offensive game is a little not great right now, we'll say, but people were freaking out. I saw a few weeks ago that actually it was probably a month ago, but an NBA executive who wanted to remain anonymous said that he'll have a Gary Harris-like career. And people were like, oh my gosh. I was like, Gary Harris has been in the league for a long time, a solid defender, a good three-point shooter. And I know that people want to see Bronny become his dad, but if you get to play in the league for a decade plus, like,
don't think that's. I just don't see it. I just don't think that's. I mean, it's not. But like, we're not gonna. The reality is, we're not going to see another LeBron James for a very long time, if not ever.
Yeah.
Because coming into the league, no matter if Bronny comes out this year or stays another, or even plays all 4 years at USC, he'll be coming into the league with not nearly as much talent and height as his father. So, I mean, this has been more talking about Bronny at this point, but
yeah, that's okay.
But that's the reality is how much time LeBron has left is tied into how long Bronny stays in college. And that's just I think LeBron's going to play one season with his son and then be done. I think that's kind of because, LeBron's is a whole businessman, and like you said, he's about to become a billionaire. I mean, there's nothing left for him to do in the league. I mean, aside from like setting the other game versus the Nets, he dropped like the he's only the second player to drop multiple games since he 40-point games and since he turned 40 or something. Like only MJ has done that, so it's like okay. He hit 9 of 10 from 3. Like okay, LeBron, you're showing off now. Like is there a need to do this anymore? Like
no.
But yeah, I mean, it's all in the end. It all rides on Bronny and when they feel it's best for him to come into the league. That's when LeBron will be done.
Yeah, and I don't know, but there's an interesting conversation too, where technically, Bronny probably from a skill standpoint wouldn't be NBA ready, and unless he stayed all 4 seasons, and for being honest about it. So, what if there's a scenario where they determine what's best for him is that he needs to stay in school longer? I mean, I question whether they'll even play together at all, and I know that's a big goal for LeBron, but
that would be that to me, like I'm not like to me that would be a disappointment. Like at this point, like I've been the biggest fan of LeBron, in his career and kind of like as a player is like don't really like him too much, but like as like an NBA fan, like
oh yeah,
this is something you're never I don't think we're even gonna ever see this again. Like
yeah,
like
probably
this
not.
were actually a possibility that an NBA player has a chance to play with their own kid on the same team at the same time. Like so like as an NBA fan, I want to see this. So hopefully it happens.
Jason Tatum's son, I think it's gonna happen.
I mean you see videos of him like playing around like after games and during games and whatnot. Like he can dribble.
Yeah, Jason Tatum said he's been preparing him since the day he was born to play in the NBA. So if he doesn't make it, that's on him. But Jason Tatum's 26, his son is 7, so he'd have to play until like 38. So that's my next prediction there. Jason Tatum and his son will play together. Let's stay in the Western Conference then. The Rockets and Warriors race. Let's talk a little bit about that. The Rockets currently sitting 2 games back behind the Warriors for the 10 seed. Kind of interesting. The Warriors and Rockets play Thursday, April 4th, so this week here. So that's a pretty big matchup upcoming between these two teams. The Rockets are going to be coming off their first loss in 11 games. They lost to the Dallas Mavericks, who are on their own 7-game winning streak. So a lot on the line here. Do you still have any faith? You think the Rockets can overtake the Warriors here?
Probably not. If we're being honest about it. And the Rockets have been on like a hell of a run, but they just happened to run into another team that's been on their own run. I'm sure we'll talk about Dallas, coming up, but I mean, and the Warriors have shown their resiliency, this season, especially with this recent stretch. I mean, they've won 4 in a row of their own, all on the road, too, and I keep going back to that that game had no business being that close. That game between the Warriors and San Antonio. Draymond Green down the stretch, and this is might as well because Draymond Green's been all involved in this this little heated rivalry, or if you want to call it that, for this playoff stretch. But you watch Draymond Green in the final stretch of that game versus San Antonio. He proved why he's still so valuable to Golden State.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he went up against Wemby, and Wemby has like almost a foot on him, and like he's just so much bigger than him, and like down the stretch, like he had Wemby's number down the stretch and made several key plays, grabbed the key offensive rebound. You know, Wemby reached, because I watched the ending sequence of that game. Draymond got a key rebound. Wemby reached over him, committed over the back. Draymond hit one of the free throws to ice the game, but like the Warriors are clicking. It seems to be they're clicking at the right time. So I think it'd be very difficult for Houston to catch them at this point. But I will say that even if Houston doesn't catch them, they can build on this stretch that they've had. It's no for their team to be, especially when we talked about them a lot last week with their future possibilities with if Jalen Green and Sengun can work together. Like this stretch, like they definitely show something. That's kind of what you want. It's kind of unfortunate we're talking about them as if they've already missed the playoffs when they still have a shot. But if we're like reality of the situation, I think like the probability or the metrics that I looked at, like say the Warriors have like a 97% chance of getting the 10 seed over them. So it's be almost impossible for the Rockets to catch them. But this is kind of what you want out of a team, a young team, you know, finishing the season, you know, down the stretch. Like you couldn't ask for the Rockets to do a much better job than what they've been doing. Like they've shown, I mean, they just, you know, like it's kind of unfortunate that like their momentum and their like, it seems like their season was over with their loss to Dallas, which is crazy with 8 games left. But I mean, that's the reality. But the Warriors, and that's what's crazy is we just got done talking about the Lakers. It seems like I think the most likely scenario, looking at the standings, is we're gonna get the Lakers Warriors matchup for a chance to move into the second part of the play-in. So, I mean, that's still wild.
Yeah, one of those teams will be one and done in the play-in tournament as it stands right now, which is crazy to think. Yeah, and the Rockets, what you want to see from them, similar to, we'll talk about the Spurs a little bit later, but whenever you have these younger teams, you just want to see some life from them. Like, does this team have any hope? Like, are they going to be able to build on this? And all the signs point to yes. And, you know, I already said last week that I think the Rockets are going to be next year's Thunder, which I don't think is a crazy statement to make. It would have been.
They're going to jump from not being in the play into number one in the Western Conference, but
That's what the Thunder did this year. Why can't, I mean, the Rockets do the same thing. If Jalen Green takes a leap into being, you know, what Shea has become, like, I don't see why they couldn't do it. I mean, maybe not the number 1 seed, but you know,
until we start seeing Jalen Green in commercials.
Oh yeah, he won't be a superstar till he's in commercials. You know the rules. I don't make them up.
Paul Pierce makes them.
Yeah, Paul Pierce sets the rules here. Yeah, I don't have much else to say. I feel like we talked about the Rockets a lot last week, but just our quick update here that they're only 2 games out. And the other thing to keep in mind, the Rockets' schedule is really tough, the remaining schedule that they have. So they have the Timberwolves, Warriors, Heat, Mavericks, Magic, Clippers, and then they have the Jazz and Trailblazers. So 7 of those, what was that, at 9 games there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games. 6 of those 8 games are not only against playoff teams, they're against like really hot playoff teams right now. So, you know, that's a situation, even if they went 3-3 in those games, you know, I'd feel pretty good if I was them going 3-3 in those games. And then if you beat the Trailblazers and Jazz, you're going 5-3. So at that point, you need the Warriors to go like 2-6 down the stretch to make the play. It's just becoming more and more unrealistic. So another team that's fighting for whether or not they're going to be in the play-in tournament, but in a positive light because they still have the ability to jump in to the top 6. The Sacramento Kings suffered a injury loss this past week with Malik Monk. Sprained his MCL. He's out 4 to 6 weeks, which means not only he'll miss the regular season, the rest of the regular season and the play-in tournament, but that also means his availability is probably going to be in question for the first round, maybe even second round of the playoffs. So how much do you think this impacts the Kings? How much?
The reality of the situation is, for the team, it's a big loss because remember when we did our predictions on who was gonna win the awards, I said Malik Monk was gonna win Sixth Man of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
So this to me is a big loss for them as a team, and it looks like they've been. I mean, they haven't been doing terrible. They're 6-4 in their last 10, but they have, in part thanks to the surge the Mavericks have been on. They have found themselves in the play-in tournament as it stands, and 2 games back of both Dallas and New Orleans. Mm-hmm. So I think the likely scenario here is they're probably going to be in the play-in. So, I mean, they're kind of, Kevin Huerter's also been out for him, I believe, as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So you're losing 2 of your best 3-point shooters and overall scorers. So they were not really, and I don't know if this sounds disrespectful or not. Probably does. They were never serious contenders in the Western Conference this season. But without Malik, I think it's going to be difficult given this stack of teams in the play-in in the Western Conference. I'd imagine they're probably not going to get out of the play-in my opinion. I think they're going to, but if it ended right now, I don't think they're beating Phoenix in the play-in game, in my opinion. And then I think whoever between the Lakers and Warriors, and this could all change a little bit because, I mean, Phoenix and Sacramento are tied, so they can flip 7 and 8, which suppose doesn't matter like a whole bunch, except for hosting the playoff game. But Lakers are only a game and a half back of both Sacramento and Phoenix, so they could still catch that 7 or 8, which is actually very important in this play-in, which means you're not, if you catch that 7 or 8, that means you're not necessarily one and done in the play-in. So, but I don't see Sacramento without Monk and without Huerter, who's been out for a while. I don't see them even making it out of the play-in tournament.
Yeah, and that seems to be fair. I mean, I think it's still an underrated part this time of year is just the depth that you have. And we see with all these injuries how important that can be. But even more so, when you get into the playoffs, you're talking long, hard-fought games. And if you're just relying on your superstars to play 40-plus minutes, you're not going to make it through the entire playoffs without them getting a little gas. So when you have a guy like Malik Monk who can score at a high level, he's been a great facilitator this year as well. And, he's a starter on a lot of teams in the NBA. So to have a guy like that come off the bench is a luxury, right? Because then some of your starters can rest and they don't have to be, there's not as much pressure on them. So yeah, I mean, I think it hurts any chance for them to make a deep run if they had any hope in the beginning. So not super promising for them. Moving up in the Western Conference standings a little bit, there's another injury to Jamal Murray, who has missed the last 5 games with an ankle injury. There was some news coming out that he could be back before the playoffs, but they're not really sure quite at this point. So it's kind of interesting when you start thinking about seeding just in the Western Conference as a whole, because you have the Thunder at number 1. The Nuggets only a half game behind them. The Thunder have played one less game, so they can make that either even or be one game ahead, depending on what happens in that game. Then you have the Timberwolves at number 3, only a game behind the Thunder. But when you were just talking about the play-in tournament and the Kings being potentially bounced and the Suns winning, got me thinking there's almost a benefit to being the team that plays the Thunder, probably, right? Coming out of the play-in tournament, if you're choosing between the Thunder and Nuggets, I don't think that there's any team that would tell you they would prefer to play the Nuggets, because that's insanity. You don't want to play the defending champs. It makes no sense. So it's kind of interesting. I doubt that nobody's going to be thinking that. They're going to be trying to win every single game. You don't want to take the risk, like if you're the Suns, and say, yeah, you know what, we'll lose the first one and try to win the second game, because then you can find yourself on the outside looking in. So it's just interesting,
get
though.
it and secure your spot.
Yeah, that's why it's not really going to matter, but it's interesting that you could be in a scenario where, say the Thunder finish as a number 2 seed. That only makes that game even more interesting if you can secure your spot and potentially have a better matchup. So, yeah, there's a lot of interesting things at play, just seeding wise and at the top of the Western Conference.
Yeah, and it's very interesting to look at this seeding, and we're going to be talking about, like I said, we're going to be talking about almost all of these teams, but especially if you're Denver at this point, like, the worst you can do is fall to 3 realistically, because you're not, the Clippers are they're 4.5 games ahead of the Clippers for 4, so they're gonna be a top 3 seed pretty much no matter what. So it's like, if I'm them, I'm making sure Jamal Murray's healthy for the playoffs, because they're gonna need him. With how stacked this Western Conference is, and these teams coming after him, like, no Jamal Murray, and they could get bounced in the first round. And I think that's the reality. Like, maybe not. So, because not right now. Because if they would match up against the Canes and they could beat them without Jamal Murray. I feel, but like you're gonna say, if they you look at it, they would need Jamal Murray to beat Oklahoma City.
Mm-hmm.
They would need Jamal Murray to beat the Clippers. They would need Jamal Murray to beat Dallas. I think they would need Jamal Murray to beat the Suns. And Lakers and Warriors are maybe, but there's like 4 teams where they need Jamal Murray to make it out of the first round.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, they just gotta make sure that Jamal Murray's healthy for the playoffs.
Yeah, and that goes back to LeBron saying health over seeding, right? So got to make sure that he rests up. I'd be surprised, honestly, if Jamal Murray played in the regular season. If we're being honest about it, at this point, I feel like just let him rest up so he's fully healthy for first round of the playoffs, since you're not at risk of being in the play-in tournament. That just seems to make the most sense to me. There's also the case that maybe even falling to number 3 is a benefit to them if they end up being matched up with the Pelicans instead of the Suns or Lakers or Warriors or even the Kings. So maybe it's not the worst thing if they slip up a little bit, go number 3, kind of play the Pelicans.
Yeah, that is true, but I do think there's something to say. You don't want to go into the playoffs necessarily with negative momentum. No, you don't. I think there's at least a little bit of stock in how you're performing going into the playoffs.
Oh, sure, there is.
So it's like you don't want to be on a complete downslide, losing several games in a row and then going into the playoff. So it's like,
yeah.
But the reality is, you want to make sure your star player, your superstar player, which I think Jamal Murray is at this point, is healthy.
Yeah, and I think that momentum is less important when you're the defending champion.
I mean,
I agree.
that they might be an exception to the,
Because
they're
I do
not
agree
like
with you overall. Like, let's
they're not
say,
they're not like a Dallas
nah.
where,
Even like the Thunder right now, like this is their first big opportunity to make some noise in the playoffs. Like if they went into the playoffs just on a complete losing streak, which they're not, but if they were, like that would be a little disheartening. Like this is a young team that needs some momentum to propel them far in the playoffs. So yeah, I don't think it's a bad point, but maybe not with the Nuggets necessarily. I'm trying to think if there's anyone we didn't touch on really in the Western Conference that's relevant.
I
If
mean,
not, yeah,
Dallas has been kind of still rolling a little bit.
they're just rolling right now. Yeah, I mean, it just confirms what we talked about over the last few weeks that you could argue that this is the number one threat in the entire Western Conference. You could argue that they're the number one threat to the Celtics. I don't know if that's true, but I wouldn't argue. I think there's an argument to be made for it. It's not crazy if you go out on a limb and say that. And I think it would be a fun finals matchup. A lot of star power with the Mavericks and Celtics.
Yeah, and I saw a video before the Mavericks Rockets game the other night. Luka was standing under the basket, threw the ball high up against the jumbotron, hit off the jumbotron and made it in. Like
Championship.
like what? Like what? Like they should have known the game was over at that point. It's like and Luka went on to score like 40-something points and like 20-something in the first quarter.
But did he do that live in a game? Because that would be more impressive to me.
That would that would be disrespectful. But
that sounds like something they should do in an all-star game. Actually, just they're already chucking up shots. Just throw it off the jumbotron and see if you can get it in.
But that you did bring up, because that's the one point that. So I saw an interesting idea about, and I'm sure this has been floated around at some point, but somebody said that Luka and Steph should do a play horse at the All-Star game.
That'd be cool. Do you
remember?
remember?
Like, that would be I would be entertained, and I would watch that because you think Steph does those crazy shots like during warm-ups and that all the time. So it's like, a Steph versus Luka horse contest. Like, I mean that I can get behind that.
Yeah, I mean, I would watch it. That sounds like, just a fun twist on the dunk contest or 3-point contest, just a fun contest. I don't know if you remember, but they did do a horse contest 2 years in a row at one point. And I looked up the years. It was 2008 and 2009 that they did do a horse contest, and Kevin Durant unsurprisingly won both of those years. So yeah, maybe they need to bring that. And there's randomly they did it in 1977 one time, and in 2019 apparently Mike Conley won the horse contest. So
I do not recall that at all.
I remember Kevin Durant doing it, yeah, and I'm looking it up now. He beat OJ Mayo in a horse competition. Oh. And in the year after, Kevin Durant beat Omri Cassipi and Rajon Rondo in a horse contest. So
what is Rondo doing now?
I have no idea. And I don't remember
I think it'd
the
be
one
a lot different this time around, because I think they'd have guys that actually have a jump shot.
Yeah, I mean that would be cool, like Luka versus Steph Curry. Who else you want to throw in there?
Like a horse tournament?
Yeah, that would tournament. I mean, I'm all for tournaments. So the more tournaments you can do, the better. And then in 2019, they did one with retired players and current players: Chauncey Billups, Tamika Catchings, Mike Conley, Zach LaVine, Chris Paul, Paul Pierce, Trae Young, and Mike Conley won of all those names. So that's interesting. But anyway, I like that idea. Maybe they'll bring it back, or maybe they'll be dissuaded from doing that since they tried it, and I guess people didn't like it. I don't know. Seems like a good idea to me. All right, let's go to the Eastern Conference now that we're done talking about horse. So let's kick it off. I guess we'll talk a little bit about the Knicks because got two kind of points here on the Knicks. So Josh Hart came out and made a comment that said he would be pleasantly surprised if Julius Randle and OG Anunoby came back. And he said, "This is the team we are going to have moving forward," referring to the team that they currently have. And if that's the case, they should be concerned. They lost this week to the Spurs in overtime. It was a great game. They lost 130 to 126. Jalen Brunson put up a career high 61 points, but not to be outdone by Victor Wembanyama, who put up his career high with 40 points and a cool 20 boards. No big deal. So a good game. No big deal. It's just another. And it feels like somebody made this comment like, we're just kind of brushing things off like this already with Wemby. It's like, no big deal. He almost had a quadruple double. No big deal. He's doing, and he's 20 years old, and we're already like just getting used to the bizarre things he does, and he hasn't even hit his prime or nowhere near it yet. So anyway, it's bizarre to think, but I guess the main focus here, and we can talk about the Spurs a little bit, but it's really the Knicks. I mean, moving forward, how confident are we that this is a team that can make any noise as is in the Eastern Conference?
Not confident at all. And that's, I mean, they're down Julius Randle and OG Anunoby. Like, you're talking, like, Josh Hart's a solid player. They couldn't Grimes this out. But you look back at their loss versus OKC. I believe it was Josh Hart, Quentin Grimes, and DiVincenzo all played the entire second half.
That's not good.
Like, that's, and it's not insanely crazy given that, you know, if Thibodeau likes a guy, he's gonna, like, I don't want to say run him into the ground, but, like, he's gonna play the guys he likes a lot. He doesn't believe in rotating guys very much. But that's still very concerning, and it looks like, from what I've been reading, they, like, ran out of gas. So, you know, to not have two guys, OG hasn't been, like, great offensively for him, but he's definitely, defensively, he's made them stronger, and we know what Julius Randle can get straight buckets. So, it's troublesome, because you look at the, right now they'd be facing Orlando in the first round. Like, I'm, like, if the Knicks had Randle and OG, I'd probably pick the Knicks fairly confidently, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But without Randle and without OG, like, if they're truly not coming back, like Hart says, and now Hardy did say he's not part of the medical staff. He hasn't been in any of those, you know, medical exams or anything, but, you know, you have to take some stock in what he says, because he is a part of the team and he is around the guys. If anybody's gonna have a pulse for what's going on there, it's gonna be a guy like him. So you have to at least take some weight into what he's saying. And if what he's saying is true, like, they're probably getting bounced by Orlando in the first round if they play them. And if for some reason, because, you know, if you're looking at the standings, they could catch Cleveland for 3. They're only half a game behind Cleveland, so they could catch. But with how this team presently constructed, I don't really think that's gonna happen. The Knicks are, you know, they're 7-3 in the last 10, but they have lost 2 in a row. So, I mean, let's say if they jump, they're 3. Right now they'd face Indiana or Miami. If Miami jumps them, like, none of these matchups are good for them if they don't have OG and Randall. Like, I'm looking at it like they're possible. I don't see like any. I mean, maybe if no, I don't see it. I'm literally looking at these standings thinking, okay, who could they beat in a 7-game series without Randall or OG? And I'm just not seeing any possible matchups for him, because the reality is, I mean, they're not beating Orlando, they're not beating Indiana, they're not beating Miami. Those are 3 teams that they're going to be matched up against one of them. They're not beating any of them.
Yeah, and that sounds disrespectful, but I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I think part of it is I just don't think they match up well with any of those teams you just mentioned. Like, if they're already getting gas before the playoffs start, you don't want to face the Magic, because that's a team that's going to push you to perform at your top, your very best every single night. This is a gritty, hard-nosed young team that, yeah, I wouldn't want to face them if I was tired personally. So I don't see that being a good matchup. The Pacers average the most points in the NBA right now, and they play very fast pace. It's up and down, up and down. A lot of transition basketball. Also doesn't feel like a great matchup for the Knicks right now. You have the Heat, who are just super experienced this time of year, and I don't think anybody ever wants to play the Heat in the playoffs, if we're just being honest about it. This is when Eric Spoelstra does his best work, is this time of year. And then you have the 76ers, who are, a possibility as well. You're telling me if Joel Embiid comes back, you want to be matched up with them? Because you're crazy if you answer yes to that. So yeah, I don't know honestly who I think that most analysts and most people would favor them over the Orlando Magic, and I think that's a mistake. I think that the Magic would
I don't think so.
take advantage. I think they would have beat up on the Knicks a little, and it
Not
would be a
guys.
good series. But yeah, I still think that analysts love. I don't know. There's something about them being in New York. On the plus side, though, for the Knicks, Jalen Brunson is officially a superstar, because I saw him in 2 different commercials this week.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He was in an AT&T commercial, and then I also saw him in a Catalina Crunch commercial on social media. So that's 2 commercials, and so I don't know if there's a level beyond superstar, but I think he's reached that plateau now.
Yeah, and I think I mean, all joking aside, I think he is a superstar, in my opinion. Like, if we're
he needed this year, though. He needed to prove it again this year, and he did.
He like last year was like, okay, he did it. Can he do it again? Can he? Because that's kind of, you need to be a superstar, you need to show it, consecutive years. And he is. I mean, we just saw him drop 61, albeit in a loss. But yeah, he's arrived as a superstar. But even without those 2 guys, they do have like solid role players along them.
Yeah.
Not to also to go under the radar, but they're also, not only those 2 guys, they're also missing Mitchell Robinson, who is a big anchor.
He just came back, but yeah.
He did just come back?
2 games ago, yeah. He's been playing only like 15, 20 minutes, but he did come back, yeah.
Okay, so but I'm just saying, but still, like, he just got back. So it's like, Brunson's not going to be able to do it all himself. And if you're running into a team like the Orlando Magic, which, based on the seeding, like, if I had to bet, that's probably going to be the matchup, I'd imagine, just because, only 7 or 8 games ago, if you're down 2+ games, it's going to be, kind of difficult to, jump or fall. But yeah, they're just not, they are in very, I wouldn't say panic mode, because they are 7-3 in their last 10, so they're not overall not playing bad.
Yeah, look at who they've beaten. Just take a quick peek for me.
Should I take a gander at who they've beaten?
I looked at it a few minutes ago while you were talking, and it's they beat like the Trailblazers, the Raptors. I mean, they did have some quality wins in there, but I think 4 of them were against like the Raptors, Trailblazers, Jazz, and one other really poor team. But
The
I
Pistons.
mean, yeah, they're keeping it together, and a lot of it is because shout out to some of these role players, because like Miles McBride has been playing really, really well.
Right. That's the guy. He's a guy. I think he's one of the guys that played the entire second half.
Yeah, Dante DiVincenzo's averaging 20 points over 20 points over the last 2 months of the season. Like these guys are playing really. I'll tell you just a random thing that's been surprising to me, but that's Bogdanovic a little bit that they traded for. He's like completely out of the rotation right now. Over the last month, he's only averaging 16 minutes a game. And that was a big acquisition. I thought people think he was going to be a bigger part of that rotation. And if you're going back only looking at the last 10 games, he's averaging like 14 minutes a game. So like he's barely playing for him right now, which has been really surprising to me. It feels like you lose some of these pieces, you're going to need that veteran to step up, but he hasn't really played much for him.
Yeah, that is a bit surprising, but you know, without these guys, and obviously if these guys do end up coming back, you know, we're having a completely different conversation, and the Knicks are going to be, you know, the Knicks should be favored against, you know, like theoretically if Randall and OG are going to come back, I think they'd beat the Magic. I feel, and you know, I'd honestly pick them. I'd probably pick them over Indiana. If that's just me, and I think I'd pick them over Miami too. But yeah, they're in a very difficult situation right now.
Yeah, and on the other side too, since we brought up the Spurs, you just got to shout them out for a second, because when you're looking at a lot of the bottom teams in the league right now, we're talking the Raptors on a 13-game losing streak. The Hornets are 2-8 in their last 10. The Pistons are 2-8. The Wizards are 3-7. The Trailblazers are 1-9. The Jazz are 1-9. The Grizzlies are 2-8. These teams suck. And the Spurs, let's just be honest, the Spurs are 4-6 over their last 10. They've had some, they've played tough against some top tier teams. So I think similar to the Rockets, where you want to see some momentum. Obviously, the Spurs don't have that level of momentum, but it's definitely a positive sign to see them continue to trend in the right direction. And we'll see how they perform with Trae Young next year. So
I did hear, some people, are in the NBA circle and people just circling online. They think that Josh Giddey would be a better fit for Wemby than Trae Young.
Josh Giddey's not going to the Spurs. I mean,
I could see a scenario where the Thunder move on from Josh Giddey.
They won't. I mean, he's playing well with that group right now. That would be silly, honestly. I think all that drama is behind him now. I would be shocked. I mean, he's a young guard with a ton of. I mean, yeah, I would love Josh Giddey. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't give me Josh Giddey, but I would be shocked.
Do you think that he'd be a better fit alongside Wemby than Trae Young would be?
I think the biggest problem you would find, Josh Giddey doesn't need the ball in his hand as much as Trae Young. So Trae Young is a great playmaker, but he does like having the ball in his hands a little more. So, I don't know how willing Trae Young would be to play off the ball with Wemby. I mean, these are two guys who just always want to be the focal point of the offense. So if Trae Young could kind of change his game a little bit, I mean, he obviously has more talent than Josh Giddey, but yeah, I mean, as of right now, based on their skill sets, yeah, I would say Josh Giddey probably fits a little bit better with. He does seem kind of like a Spurs model point guard too, honestly, but yeah, that would be interesting to see. One last thing in the Eastern Conference here before we start to wrap things up. The Joel Embiid, who I mentioned his name just a few minutes ago, but he is nearing a return, possibly at the end of this week, maybe next week. But either way, it's looking like he will be available for the 76ers in the play-in tournament. I mean, I could argue that even without Embiid, that they would still make it to the next round, and the Bulls could upset the 76ers, but realistically, I think they could do it. But anyway, no, they're going to be a tough matchup. We'll see when he comes back, how he looks when he's back. I will say Joel Embiid typically doesn't take a ton of time to ramp up. Every time he comes back, it seems like he comes back full force for 5 games and then is hurt again. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe he needs to ease into it a little more. But I can't see him coming for a play-in tournament game and easing into anything. But obviously has huge ramifications on the Eastern Conference as a whole. I mean, that's a team that, I mean, they're not beating the Celtics. They're probably not beating the Bucks, but you never know. The Bucks have been upset before in the playoffs. You probably don't want to be staring at Joel Embiid in the first round.
Well, they got Brook Lopez.
Oh yeah, silly me.
Man, he's a whole another discussion for this season. God. But yeah, I mean, and it's not just about It's not just about having Embiid back for making a run to the top and coming out of the East, because I don't think anybody's really expecting that out of Philly at this point. But if you're Philly, you gotta do what you can do to try your best and go into the playoff with some momentum. And if you're looking at Embiid possibly returning, which, even as of like a week or two ago, we didn't know if this was possible or not.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I mean, yeah, I mean, the odds are you're looking at they could. They are. I mean, we're talking about that borderline scenario. They are 2 games out of sixth place, 2 games behind Indiana for 6th. They're a game and a half behind Miami for 7. So, I mean, realistic scenarios, they're gonna find themselves, in the play-in, probably in the 8th spot, because they're not dropping it. They're not dropping the 9th. But yeah, I mean, they're gonna be one of the most dangerous lower seeds in recent memory, especially if Joel Embiid comes back, because this is a team, like, when the season started, like, this team could come out of the Eastern Conference, like, possibly like challenge Boston, challenge Milwaukee. You honestly, when the season started, flip where Cleveland is now with Philly, and that's kind of more indicative of what a lot of people thought the standings were going to look like. So but Philly's, I mean, it's not Philly, but Cleveland's kind of taken Philly's spot as like the 3rd best team in the Eastern Conference.
Sure.
So it's like, but so they're gonna be dangerous. Like, if they end up as they're not beating Boston in a 7-game series. But that'd be a treat to get Boston and Philly in the first round. When the season started, we thought that could be a possible, Eastern Conference Finals matchup. So, to get that in the first round would be pretty exciting. If they climbed the 7th, to get them in Milwaukee, like, that's the thing. Like, we're gonna get a very exciting first round matchup. Even if they catch 6th and end up playing like Cleveland, that would be another. I mean, they're gonna make it very tough on whoever they play in the first round, especially if Embiid is back, and they definitely have a chance to come out of the first round. Probably as long as they don't play Boston, if they can somehow avoid Boston. But even if they play a team like Milwaukee, I think, while Milwaukee should be probably heavily favored to beat them, I don't think it'd be out of the realm of possibility for them to upset Milwaukee in the first round if Embiid's back. So
Sure.
This is honestly this is pretty monumental for the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point to make. I mean, they do slot in as one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference just with one guy. I mean, it's crazy to think, but yeah, I mean, I think that's the reality here. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's crazy to me. I think that next week will be our last episode before playoff basketball, I believe, or maybe the weekend, but we're getting right there. I mean, we're going to be talking about playoff matchups, and probably once those are settled in, we're going to have a show just kind of dedicated to predictions, I'm assuming, where we go through once we know the seeding, we can go through and predict everything as it stands. So that'll be fun, a fun conversation to have over the next few weeks. Is there anything else that you want to touch on, or anything else that we need to wrap up here?
No, I mean, I'm just saying, like, just to piggyback, just to shine some light on Philly. While Embiid's been out, I mean, I think we gotta give some hats off to Tyrese Maxey, who's really been like.
He gets no hats off because he lost me a playoff matchup by getting scratched at the last minute. But yeah,
that's unfortunate. I don't feel sorry for you at all. I'm still salty about you beating me. But that's another thing. But as far as the reason Philly is even afloat right now, and still, I mean, they're not necessarily they're in the play-in right now, but the reason they haven't completely fallen off the radar yet. They've had a lot of guys. You know, Tobias Harris has been solid. Oubre's been solid. But Tyrese Maxey's kind of like been holding them above water. I mean, look at he's averaging 26, 6, 4 and 6 this season. You know, so I mean, I don't know if we're ready to put Tyrese Maxey into the superstar category yet. Probably not.
No.
Not. I think he's in a very similar situation that Jalen Brunson was in last season.
Yes, agreed.
I think if Tyrese Maxey is doing what he's doing this season, if he does it again next season, I think then we're talking about Maxey reaching superstar status. I think that's kind of the boat we're in with Maxey. But I mean, hats off to Maxey for really keeping this. And it's not to discredit everybody else, because it takes more than one guy, obviously. But you know, Maxey's been kind of the key.
Oh yeah,
the number one piece in holding this Sixers team above water.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anyone that would disagree with that. I mean, when you look at the people around him right now, I mean, it's just it's a cast of characters. With Tobias Harris and Oubre and Kyle Lowry and Buddy Hield, and I think Nick Batum is there, and Paul Reed. Just a bunch of some subpar guys surrounding
Cameron
him.
Payne's there now, I guess.
Cameron Payne, yeah, he had a great game the other night. But anyway, yeah, okay. I can't think of anything else then. I think we covered everything that we had on our list here. So thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next time.